It is a great honor for me to introduce. I'm very excited about our speaker tonight. He's quite a man of great talents. For those of you who were here early and had a chance to listen to the music that was being played, that was a recording by our speaker tonight. So he is not only a military man, but can certainly has an appreciation for the arts as well. So we appreciate that tremendous talent that he has. You know, I looked through some of the biographical information on General Curry's webpage, and I also looked at some of the book reviews posted on Amazon.com, and I found them very interesting because General Curry has also written a book about his experience called From Private to General, and his experience in rising up through the ranks in the military. Quite an impressive story. And one reader wrote, a great read from start to finish. If you enjoy history, the military, or stories of personal success, this book is for you. General Curry personifies what it is to be an American, and his book elucidates this perfectly. As an American, you can accomplish anything by dreaming big, working hard, and following after God. Another reader wrote, we need to be grateful for people like Curry, endowed with both superior character and intellect, served in our armed forces. Curry does us all proud, and his book is a testament to the best of what the United States is about. And another reader wrote, General Curry's life is the ultimate example of life well lived, an American success story of the highest caliber. So I am very excited to hear more from General Curry, and I appreciate you all being out here tonight, and I know you're eager to hear what he has to say as well. So with that, let me welcome General Curry.
Thank you very much. Pat, thank you for everything, and where's Ben? There he is. Thank you. Ben is the one who invited me. He and I spent some time together in Purcellville some time ago. Last year, I guess it was, or 2 years now. 2 years ago, and I remember the time very well. And when he called and said, I'd like you to come and talk, I said, absolutely. So that's how I ended up here, courtesy of Ben. Tonight I'm going to be speaking on peace through strength. First, let me share a few words of background. My father was my wife and I both are from the same area in western Pennsylvania. And my father was a steel worker. And when he wasn't doing that, he was a farmer. My wife's father was a coal miner. And so we have a coal miner and a steel worker who wed. That seems very logically, economically. I mean, on the economic side, it makes good sense. So I'm glad we put that together. But the real story I wanted to tell you is that I met my wife, Charlene. We call her Lady Char. She has a book out too, by the way. And I forgot to bring any tonight. Oh. And everybody here probably would have wanted 10 copies, but But Charlene and I met when her father talked to my father and said, I'd like to come out to your farm and plant a garden. And so my father said, great idea. And he came out and he brought this little red-haired girl with him. And we spent the whole summer playing together, running around the woods, climbing trees, walking through the streams with your shoes off and the moss patches and all that. It just had a delightful time. At the end of the summer, we had figured this out pretty well, so I proposed to her. I was 13 and she was 10 at the time. She accepted. And we continued to hold hands and to talk to each other and date until she finished high school. And she graduated from high school 1 week, and I think at the end of that week or the next week, we got married. In steel towns and coal mining towns, people are very, very patriotic. And when a war comes along, the young men of those towns, those young men just go down and sign up. You don't have to persuade them. You don't have to go and push them and pull teeth or draft them. They go down and sign up. And so I was from this little steel town, actually out in the country. And as time went on, the Korean War started. And that tells you a little bit about my age. When the Korean War started, I went down with a number of other young men, and we enlisted and volunteered. They signed us in. I was a private, and all of these young fellows went off to school, and then went off to training, and then off to the Korea to fight in the war. But there was one class out of about 10 classes that went to Europe. So instead of going to fight in the war in Korea, they sent me off to Europe. And I spent a year in Europe listening to the music, walking through the parks, while the rest of the army was over in Korea fighting the war. A year later, I returned back to the United States to a place called Fort Benning, Georgia, and I came back to go to infantry officer candidate school. And after 6 months, they got me through the school, and they gave me second lieutenant bars, and I formally entered the officer corps, and 34 years later, I retired as a major general. Now, I not only did that, but after I had spent my time in the military, I also worked as a civilian appointee, a presidential appointee. I worked in the Carter administration, the Reagan administration, and the first Bush 41 administrations. And then I wanted to come to this and talk to you about peace through strength because it has a very close meaning to me. President Reagan, by the way, just loved to tell stories. And he could tell them just one story, and it would go right into the next one, and then right into the next one. And if you were going to get a word in edgewise, you had to really physically almost leap in there because there was no time in between his stories that he told. And I'd like to tell you one that he told me and Lady Shar one afternoon. We had some private time with him, and he said it was World War II. And this group of Americans, soldiers, were over in England, waiting for the Normandy invasion. And he said, here they are in England, and there's a long bar, and at one end of the bar there are a bunch of American soldiers. At the other end of the bar there are a bunch of British soldiers. And he said, the Americans are standing there. He said, and one American would say, I propose a toast to the Queen of England. And everybody would say, here to the Queen of England. And some American would say, well, I'll drink to that. And then they would all drink. And then a little bit later, another American would jump up, I propose a toast to the King of England. And the American said, we'll drink to that. Well, the British soldiers became furious. Down at the end of the bar, and they said, these Americans are over here, they're making fun of our king and they're making fun of our queen, and we're going to teach them a lesson. He said, now I'm going to go and say something to them, and then all you guys back me up, and we will have a fight in this bar, and we'll clean the house with these Americans. So he said they went down the bar, and there the Americans drinking their beer and having a good time, and in the middle of all of this, the British soldier walks up to the American with his beer mug, and he says, I propose a toast to the President of the United States because the President of the United States is a jerk. And he said, this American turned around, looked at him and smiled, and he said, I'll drink to that. One day when I was working for the Carter administration, the Secretary of Defense, Harold Brown, said, he said, we need some kind of motto for the Pentagon, something kind of catchy. And we sort of had a little contest in the office to see if we could come up with something for him. And I came up with something. I came up with I said, well, let's use this slogan, peace through strength. Harold Brown said, that's too warlike. This is the Pentagon. All right? And he says, that's too warlike. He says, he said, we can't use that. About a year went by. We had another election. Carter lost. Reagan won. Into the Defense Department comes Caspar Weinberger as Reagan's Secretary of Defense. Caspar Weinberger comes in and he said, we need a slogan in here. And he said, the slogan is peace through strength. So I'm sort of wedded to this peace through strength. And probably the best example of what happens when a major power deserts peace through strength and takes the road of appeasement. Probably the best example of appeasement is Great Britain before World War II, when Hitler was rising to power. Chamberlain was the Prime Minister of Great Britain. He was determined to keep England out of war, and he was going to do that by negotiations and diplomacy, appeasement, all those sorts of things, and he knew that was the way to go, and he insisted on it. However, he had a nemesis in the Parliament whose name was Winston Churchill, and Churchill wasn't going to put up with that foolishness for 1 second. And so I would like to quote here from Winston Churchill, and he says, the anesthetic effect of German promises to negotiate in these years was extraordinary. Hitler never negotiated. He lied, he bluffed, he blackmailed, but serious negotiation was a skill he despised, a refuge for weaklings. And I would suggest to you, so it is today. Ahmadinejad, the president of Iran, lies, bluffs, blackmails, but he despises Obama and he despises the United States of America, and he has no intention of honorably negotiating with us under any condition on any subject. Winston Churchill also tried to get Chamberlain to really adopt a very strong policy of peace through strength, build up the armed forces of England. But Churchill failed. And finally, he stood up in Parliament one day and said to everybody, he said, do not let His Majesty's government believe that Germany is asking for equal status. That is not what Germany is seeking. All these bands of sturdy Teutonic youth marching through the streets and roads of Germany with the light of desire in their hearts and eyes are not looking for status, they are looking for weapons. He still didn't make much of an impression on Chamberlain. And then he said this. He said, we have taken away the defenses of Czechoslovakia in the same breath as we have guaranteed them. That's what the United States has done. We have taken away the missile defenses of Poland and Ukraine and Eastern Europe. And at the same time, we have told them that they can rely on us and count on us for their missile defense. Now, both Chamberlain and Obama emphasized diplomacy over confrontation. And as a result, Chamberlain got World War II. And I suggest to you that Obama will get some kind of a Middle East war sooner or later. If Obama cannot contain Iran now while it is a non-nuclear state, what chance is there that he can contain Iran after it becomes a nuclear power? And I'd suggest to you that he cannot. The last quote from Churchill is this one, and it's from The Gathering Storm. The gathering storm of World War II, as Churchill called it, became apparent to British men in bars, women pushing baby carriages, shelf stackers in supermarkets, taxi drivers, businessmen, union shop stewards. It was obvious to everyone. In short, it became more and more obvious, except to the oligarchy that was in power in London. And so it is today. I'd suggest to you that mechanics, firefighters, hairdressers, clerks, airline pilots, Tea Party members, I prefer to call them tea sippers, by the way, and many other good, solid Americans are telling Obama's government that enough is enough, and it's time for Moses to tell Obama to let my people go. Amen. But the Obama administration, in its shabby first year, has been oblivious to the will of the American people. Peace through strength is as important today as it was in the time of President Reagan. Much to the chagrin of the Obama administration, America is still the greatest nation on the face of the earth. Without the United States, the world would collapse. I'm not overstating that. Those of us who have lived overseas a lot in our lifetimes know for a fact that that is the way it is. In fact, just a second, let me finish my thought here, and I'll tell you a little quick story about that. Our fight today is not just to resurrect the Republican Party. It is to save America and the American way of life. It is also to save the free world. And so the phrase peace through strength is as important today as it was in President Reagan's day when he coined it in 1980. America is still the world's greatest nation, its only superpower, and without its leadership, the free world and Western civilizations as we know today would collapse. If the United States does not lead the free world, who will? Russia? China? Hugo Chavez? And I think if Patrick Henry were here tonight, he would jump up back here and say, forbid it, Almighty God. Some things need to happen in closing, and that is, I pray a lot. We had a lot of prayer during our cancer period, an awful lot of prayer from lots and lots of people, many of them in this room. And today I pray that God will frustrate Obama's health care plan, confuse Obama's cap and trade intentions, stop him from increasing the debt and raising taxes, and not allow him to nationalize our great and our free America. You know, Tip O'Neill was one of the great Democrat House leaders. He was really a great guy, and I spent a lot of time with him. We were at the Capitol, and he decided to have a sort of a walk around cocktail party, and he closed down the rotunda of the Capitol and wheeled in a whole bunch of bars, and everybody just had a grand old time. And Shar, my wife, and Natasha, who is sitting here, was with us at the time, and Tip O'Neill fell in love with Natasha. And so here we are, and of course she's young enough to be his great-granddaughter, you know, and he is walking from little groups in the Capitol to the next group with her on his arm all evening. This was not 5 minutes. This went on for quite some time. And I'm looking at my watch. We're supposed to leave there and go across town to the Hilton Hotel. And when we got there, we were going to join the President of the United States at some kind of a formal dinner. I was the commanding general of the military district of Washington, so that's how I was involved in all this stuff. And I'm watching my watch. I know what time the president arrives. The Secret Service comes up to me and says, he just walked into the Hilton Hotel. And we just keep going down the road. And finally, I walked over to Tip O'Neill and tugged on his arm, and he stopped and looked at me and said, yes. And I said, you know, it's time. I said, the president is at the holding room in the Hilton Hotel, and he's waiting for you right now. And he said, do you mean, General, to tell me that the Speaker of the House is causing the President of the United States to wait for him? And I said, yes, sir, that's exactly what I'm telling you. He said, well, that's my intention.
General, let me say this. I want to thank you for being here tonight. Also, I want to say that I really admire a man who can both sing and blow things up.
Touche, touche. Okay. That's good.
General, you asked earlier if the United States doesn't lead the world, who will? You recall when the Berlin Wall fell in '89, subsequent to that, some of our friends on the other side of the political spectrum said, well, it's unfair that there's only one superpower left. Maybe there shouldn't be a world leader. Could you respond to that?
There's a perverse feeling, I think, among some of our colleagues on the left who really believe that. They believe that the United States should not be called a great nation. Our president believes that. And they honestly believe that no matter what happens anywhere, we should just simply fold our little tent and go away. But you know, if you're somebody like a person living in Haiti right now, you say, thank God for that crazy superpower that's right next door. You know, somebody. What's that old story about? It's a rotten job, but somebody's got to do it. It is a rotten job, but the United States is the world's policeman, whether we like it or not, and whether we want to be or not, and we don't want to be. I don't want to be. I've had enough war, and it's not fun. And so. I just wish that our colleagues on the left would spend a little more time singing God Bless America and a little less time doing the things that they do. Yes?
I'd just like to, a short story you might be able to confirm. I was in the Pentagon when President Reagan took office. And at the time, we were allowed to wear uniforms once a week. I can't remember what day it was, Friday or something like that. And I heard that he was in a gathering and somebody, and it could have been you, that's why I'm interested in your comment, somebody said something that impressed him. He said, that's pretty sound, who are you? And apparently this guy said, I'm General or Admiral so-and-so. And Reagan's response was, how am I supposed to know that? Where's your uniform? Just like that. We all could wear uniforms all the time. I mean, just one response from him. He was is that close?
That's close. I was not the one to do that. But you're right, very close. And you know, he brought in the team with Weinberger and that whole crew that Weinberger brought in with him. Their interest was in making America strong. And back, you know, our job in the military is to protect and defend the United States of America. That's our job. And he believed that's what we were supposed to be doing. You know, of course, as you know, the stories that are told about him are just legend.
Well, my question is, peace through strength, when we had a big enemy, was a concept that rang pretty true with that. Now, with the kind of adversaries we're facing, that's still true, but strength means different. A lot different thing, doesn't it?
It probably means something different. It doesn't mean B-52s loaded with nuclear weapons. But, you know, if you see what's going on right there in the little town of Marja over in Afghanistan right now, and watch what's going on over there, they're clearing that town building by building, room by room, block by block. And the only way you can do that is you got to come in with overpowering firepower and strength and work your way through. There's no easy way to do that. That's dirty work, and people die doing that.
General, we've moved over here.
Thank you, General, also for coming here tonight. My name is Tom. In an era of limited budgets where we're not going to go back to Cold War era of spending, I believe that we should increase our military budget. The question is, should we weigh it towards a particular service or type of potential future war, or should we spread it evenly? In other words, plan more for counterinsurgency, plan more for naval threats, such as the People's Liberation Army Navy in Iran, or perhaps Air Force? Or how should we best spend our military dollar? Thank you.
I don't pretend to be, all knowledgeable on that, but I can give you my judgment. My judgment is, folks, we are entering one of the most dangerous military periods in our life. I know that sounds strange, but we are moving in that direction. One is we have the counterinsurgency type wars everywhere. You could find one of these anywhere you want to find it and get involved in fighting it if you want to get involved in fighting it. But at the same time that's happening, you have the Chinese who are publicly saying they're going to build more aircraft carriers, publicly saying they feel they should have a greater influence in the world with their military than they do. You have Putin, who, as you know, just announced, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, that Russia is about to build a new long-range bomber. Well, there's only two countries in the world that he could build that to influence. One's the United States, the other one being China. So I just say to you, we don't know right now the answer to that question. I would say be very careful, spread your money around very wisely. Don't get caught up in any great building of any kinds of things that don't make some sense to you. And I think you have to keep your intelligence very closely keyed in on the Russians and on the Chinese. And we'll have to see how this thing develops. And we need great wisdom in the White House while this is all going on.
Greg Voitkin. As a follow-up to that, one of the concerns has been the traditional confrontations between nation states. However, what you're alluding to springs into the thought of our current challenges with non-nation states. What are your thoughts on that arena?
We don't have many options. We're going to be drug into some kind of something with these small non-nation state. Well, you know, the whole Muslim business is non-nation state. So that's something, but we got to deal with it, whether we want to deal with it or not. And I agree that in the past, you know, we had clean wars, where, you know, people would stand up with their flags and declare war, and Congress would declare a war, and then we would go out and we would fight, and your armies would come together and navies, and we would clash, and then that was it. You didn't kill children, and you didn't kill women. You didn't kill defenseless male civilians, because all of these things were taboo. There is no taboo today. These folks will kill anybody, anything, under any conditions, and they really don't care. And we have to be prepared to handle that. And part of it sometimes is very brutal.
At what point do you think perhaps we might be overextended, and what are the signs that that might be the case, and what should we do to make sure that we don't needlessly get into wars because we have so many allies that need our protection? Thank you.
You're saying there are limits, and I agree with you. I think there are limits. I think that we really have to be very, very careful how we go about this. I don't think we should strike out to be the nursemaid, the nanny for the world. I really don't believe that. I personally think that many of the wars we fought in the last 50 years, I'm not sure we have paid really much attention to how we went about it and whether we have done the right thing. The fact that you can fight doesn't mean you ought to fight. And you ought to pick your fights very carefully. And I think you really don't want to get in a war. And when I say a war, I'm talking about the whole panoply. That is from counterinsurgency up to fighting with Russia. You don't really want to get into that in my judgment, you don't want to get into that kind of thing unless you really believe that it's an important war and you must be in it. My feeling would be wherever around the world we could withdraw soldiers and sailors and airmen from obligations, I would lead the charge on that. I think it has to happen. It should happen. We don't have unlimited resources. The way we're building our national debt up right now, it's going to really crumble. And we have got to back off from some of these commitments and some of these expenditures. So I just don't feel very good at all about going out and getting our nose in the tent of every insurgency, every war, no matter how much people beg us to. I think that our job is to protect America, to take care of America, to take care of our children, take care of our grandchildren. That's what we're really supposed to be doing. That's what we ought to be doing. And that's where the effort should go. That's where the money should go. And if we have time to do other things, the answer is fine. But it's America first. And you may say to me that sounds like a very selfish approach. And the answer is, I plead guilty.
Thank you, General, for coming. Just a quick question. What are your thoughts on the closing of Gitmo?
It may not be the dumbest idea that has ever been laid on the table, but it's close to it. Huh? Here we are with an economic crisis. My Lord, why do you want to spend another 100 or 200, and some people say $300 million for a trial at a time when we can't even pay our bills? This doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, you got to be practical about these things and get out of the politics of it. And our friend over here talked about on the right. Listen, I am up to here with on the right. I've been a Republican all my life. My father was a Republican before me. I don't understand it. The Republicans had a chance to do it right, and we failed. Now, the good news is it looks like the good Lord's going to give us a chance to do it again. Maybe we'll get it right this time.
This question may pertain to you, but do you know any good military man that might be a good president?
Other than me. That's a hard one to answer. Petraeus probably could be, a good one. He's the only name that comes to my mind.
He's interesting.
Huh?
Is he interesting?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. But your point, your underlying point behind this, though, is right, which is we need somebody who knows what they are doing. Okay. Yeah, I'm with you.
General Curry, thank you so much for coming out here. My name's Rebecca, and I'm a student here at Patrick Henry College, and I'm the chair of the Patrick Henry College Republican Club. And I just have a question. What can we as young people, your words of wisdom tonight and your stories were so encouraging and inspiring. And what can we do as young people, college Republicans here, in the age that we live in, to get to keep these ideas alive and to keep spreading them? Because I feel like young people today are losing this idea of peace through strength. And how can we keep this strong in America among my generation?
I kind of think that some adults are going to have to stand up to the plate. I don't think it's fair even to dump on you young folks keeping this alive. I don't think that you should have to do it. I think yours is the energy, the participation, the youth. You people are inexhaustible. When I was running for Congress, man, you get a bunch of young folks out of college, and I did. We'd pound every doorbell there was. I mean, these kids were just that's what they do best. And debate in school and all that sort of thing. And it seems to me what has to happen is the Pats, the Patricias of the world, and the Joes have got to stand up and figure out the answer to your question and then help you do it.
First of all, General and Lady Shar, I want to thank you for your 34 years of sacrifice and service to our nation. That is huge.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, and your daughter as well, and other family members, because I know it affects the kids. I have many friends who have been in a career military. My question, you have a sense of God's sovereign hand on your life, I sense, and on our nation. And I just wondered if you, from a personal perspective, would share how your faith has helped strengthen and inform you over the years of service to our nation as a military, as a presidential appointee, and now as a statesman. Thank you.
Let me tell you a story. In Vietnam, I was an infantryman, and my assignment was to be an advisor to a South Vietnamese infantry regiment that was stationed in the jungle. And I spent a year in the jungle with those people. It was fascinating. You know, it was so bad out there that they flew in by helicopter and dropped me off with my footlocker, and they said, "This is it." And I'm all alone. Helicopter takes off, and there's nobody there but me and my bag and my footlocker. And finally, a Jeep comes down with a lieutenant in it, who, by the way, had been born and reared in Manhattan. He had never driven in his life. And his driving of that Jeep was a wonder, a wonder. And we finally got there, but I tell you that the day ended up one day when we were up in the Laos, Cambodia, North Vietnam border where they all met, called the Tri-Border Area, and we were there. I had a captain whose name was Larry McNamara. Good Catholic boy. Had been brought up by the sisters and the nuns and all that sort of stuff, and had learned absolutely nothing, which is hard to do in a school like that. And the radio rings, and it's right at dark. It's just right now turning twilight. It's past twilight. It's almost dark. Phone rings, and it's Larry. And Larry says, we are fully surrounded. This was normal, by the way. He says, we are fully surrounded by the North Vietnamese army. He said, they outnumber us about 5 to 1. He said, the Vietnamese officers deserted the Vietnamese troops as soon as the shooting started. The Vietnamese officers are gone. I am now commanding the South Vietnamese officers, and I don't speak South Vietnamese. And they had a few people there who could sort of, translate a little bit. And he said, you got to get me out of here. And I said, we're right at dark. You're in the jungle. There's no way we can't get helicopters in. And so there's just no way to get you out of there. And finally, after a lot of things, I finally went back, and this is a fact. I went back and I went out into the jungle, and where I had a tent. And I went out there and I got on my knees and I prayed and I said, God, this man deserves better. And can't you get him out of there? Because there ain't no way in the world we're going to get him out of there. And after a while, and not 5 minutes, but after a while, I really felt I had the answer. This is all in my book, by the way. I really felt that I had the answer. And I went back in, I got the South Vietnamese together, and I said, your soldiers and my officer are right here. The North Vietnamese have moved in all around. I said, what I want you to do is I want you to plot a wall of fire about 100 meters thick, and we'll go up one side and across the top, and we'll go down the other side, and we'll leave the fourth side open. And we're going to fire what we call time on target. And that's where you measure actually the distance from each gun to the target and how long the weapon will be, the bullet will be, the shell will be in flight. And you time them so that when you start firing them with stopwatches, all the shells arrive at one time. And it's like a tsunami. The earth actually ripples, just like this. And if you're close to that thing, a lot of things happen. Of course, this is at night, so you lose your night vision. Your ears bleed. Your nose bleeds. You are not having a good night when that happens. So I said, that's what we got to do. And I said, when you're ready, get your guys ready. I said, let me know. We will fire. And then your job is to fight your way out of the area that we leave open for you. And he says, North Vietnamese are listening. They speak English, unlike his. He said, they speak English. And he said, you know, they're going to be waiting for us. They'll ambush us coming out of that horseshoe. And I said, no, they won't do that. And I said, here's the way we're going to do it. I said, I can tell you the part that I'm going to leave open, and they don't know what part's going to be left open. And I'll tell you what end of the horseshoe is open. And he said, how are you going to do that? I said, well, do you remember your training from the nuns back in school? And he says, people are dying all over the place. And you're telling Bible stories. I had a reputation for telling Bible stories. And he said, you're telling Bible stories. And I said, yes. I said, because the end of the horseshoe that's open is the direction the star came from when Jesus was born. You got that? He says, I got that. So about 3-4 minutes later, he called. He said, we're ready. We fired. And I mean, it just destroyed everything. You know, trees are dropping, all that sort of. So we go through this. That is the end of him until daylight, because I don't know what's happened to him. I don't know where he is. He can't use his radio because it'll give away their position. I don't know whether he's living. I don't know whether he's dead. I don't know what in the world has gone on with him. But God knows what's going on. I really believe this. I have believed that things like this happened to me in the government. It happened to me in the military. It's happened to me all my life. I really believe strongly in this. And so what I didn't know and what God knew was when you came out of the east end of the horseshoe, there was a cliff. The result was the North Vietnamese knew there was a cliff. They had no soldiers on the east end of the triangle, of the horseshoe. None. It was completely open. And this is night now, and the soldiers just ran right off the cliff. Now, the good news was they only had about a 15-foot drop. And then it went like this down to the bottom of the valley floor. And as you know, the soil in the jungle, the soil in the jungle is very, very spongy. So you're going to do all right. 15 feet is no big deal. And they just ran right off into outer space. Fell down, went all the way to the bottom. And they made it out. The next morning we met at the river, and you know we didn't lose a single soldier. How's that? Good.
What a neat story. Great. Thank you.
We ought to close on that.
Very much. That's a great close. I have something to do.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you very much.